Novel Navigator. Chapter 51, The Last Phase. A smart choice from Donald. Ron said with his arms folded across his chest. When clumped together, they would be a bigger target, and it is harder to dodge the attacks. See how that one archer is positioned. Dakota pointed at the screen. On the screen, the only archer among the players was positioned behind the players that had the greatest defensive weapons. The archer was ready to fire at Kuruma. It is starting to look like a proper party. Ron nodded with acknowledgement. They let the tank, Adam, handle the aggro. Donald, the leader of the party, gives out the orders. Others are positioning themselves strategically. This was also not planned beforehand. Dakota said. At first, it looked like everyone was going to be everyone for themselves. It would be disastrous, and there would have been a lot of deaths. This is all because of Adam. Ron said. When he gives the order, all the players attack Kuruma simultaneously. This allows all the players to deal damage to Kuruma, which helps them get some points for their total score. This way, all the players are left satisfied. If there wasn't any unity, all the players would have just rushed at Kuruma, desperately trying to get a few hits in. Adam, now, does the hardest part and lets the others have easy hits on the boss. It was masterful. In Ron's vision, he imagined a gigantic Adam, who was standing over the chessboard, strings going from his fingers to the players. They were the chess pieces, and he was controlling them like a puppet master, facing a lonely king on the other side of the board. Now, the question remains, how will Adam handle the magic phase? Dakota wondered out loud. Also, will the players be able to resist the temptation? Ron narrowed his eyes. Will they go for the kill or follow the orders till the end? This is still far from over. Dakota said in a serious tone. Kuruma becomes more dangerous when it nears its death. Kuruma started launching fireballs at the players. It was hot and intense, causing chaos among the players as they scrambled to avoid getting hit. At that moment, Adam rushed in and slashed through Kuruma's Achilles tendons, forcing it down on its knees. It roared in pain but slowly started to stand back up, as if the pain only fueled its rage further. Adam lifted his sword over the shield and stabbed through Kuruma's back. There was a small enough hole in its armor for the sword to pierce through. Kuruma again roared in pain and then summoned a powerful wind that pushed Adam back. He still managed to hold his ground, and as soon as the wind stopped, he rushed back in and slashed across Kuruma's back. The light blood spewed out from the wound, staining the ground beneath them. Archer, fire! Donald swung down with his broadsword, signaling the archer. The archer let go of the string and fired a wooden arrow at Kuruma. It pierced through Kuruma's shoulder, but it didn't look like it was capable of stopping it. Kuruma growled loudly and turned back to Adam, then started shooting fireballs at him like there was no tomorrow. Adam swung his shield sideways and smashed through the fireballs. He didn't choose to block, but instead chose to smash right through. It was easy to see why he did that. The fireballs packed a lot of power. When they smashed into something, they exploded in a burst of flames. However, when Adam destroyed them, they died off with a whimper. While the fireballs were very destructive, their defense was weak, and they needed to reach a certain amount of speed in order to maintain their power and eventually explode. Adam was at very close range to Kuruma, causing its fireballs to be very weak. It looked like Kuruma didn't understand that fact as it continued to fire those fireballs. It was because Kuruma was not very intelligent. It was quite dangerous for coin feeders, but still very low-ranked chaos being. Thus, its intelligence level was not high enough to realize the reason for the ineffectiveness of its attacks. It was why Adam chose to instantly go to close range and attack Kuruma with his sword. If he let Kuruma do whatever it wanted, it would be very bad. Kuruma's health continued to drop drastically after Adam destroyed the fireballs, which he then slashed through Kuruma's exposed parts. It continued to writhe in pain. Its health went below 10%, and some of the players' eyes lit up in excitement. There was some unrest among them as Kuruma was near death. Adam didn't pay attention to them and continued bypassing Kuruma's defenses, then dealing painful attacks to its exposed parts. Its magic ability is also at the lowest rank. It can't do much other than summon some wind and hurl fireballs at me. However, soon the end is near. Are we allowing him to get the kill? Nico whispered in Donald's ear. Nico clearly looked anxious, as it looked like Adam was more than capable of just killing Kuruma alone. He didn't need them. Wait. Donald said with narrowed eyes. If chaos ensues, all of us will be in danger. Kuruma is almost dead. Nico said anxiously. If we don't anything. Donald scoffed and stayed silent. He was focusing on the fight with great interest. He had already learned a lot about leadership and how to control the party. It was all thanks to Adam. In the future, I might become the leader of a party in some guild, and this will be a valuable experience for me. It is far more valuable than killing the boss. The Chaos Warrior, Kuruma. Health, 2%. The players on the sidelines flinched and looked extremely agitated, with sweat trickling down their faces. A while away, Ramon and Hannibal licked their dry lips and looked like they were ready to pounce at a moment's notice. At that moment, Adam dodged a sloppy punch from Kuruma and slashed through its exposed waist. More blood spewed out. And then Kuruma's health reached the final %. The eyes of the players flashed with greed, and they rushed straight at the boss with their weapons raised high. Adam didn't say a word and instead backed off slightly in retreat. I knew it. Ron looked sour-faced. Those impatient fools. It is always the same. I suppose. Not even Adam managed to make them lose their greed. Greed is a common aspect of human nature. Dakota muttered under her breath. Unfortunately, it seems to be a part of us that will never go away. In the new world, if they did shit like this, their party leaders would cut off their heads. The tutorial was created to be a competition. Competition makes them strong. However, it also weakens them in a sense. Now, I wonder how many will die. The players, with greed in their eyes, launched their attacks from a very close range. At that moment, Kuruma raised its eyes and took a step backwards. Then it started weaving through all the attacks effortlessly. All the attacks missed it by an inch. It looked like the weapons were about to slash right through, but at the final moment, Kuruma was able to dodge each one with grace and precision. This was different. Kuruma hadn't moved like this during the entire fight. It was quite slow, stupid, and just used brute strength in attacks. It, of course, tried to dodge before but was unsuccessful. Now, Kuruma was like a whole different person. The last phase, Kuruma has the ability of Kiryoku. Chapter 52, Attack Intent. In the control room, the large screen flickered as if there was a power surge, but then the video feed stabilized. Even though Kuruma's Kiryoku is at the lowest rank, it is still untouchable at the current moment. Now, how will they handle this? Ron said with his arms crossed. He was very much looking forward to this. Most of the groups I have overseen are usually waiting for Kuruma to exhaust itself, as using Kiryoku is exhausting. Dakota said. Muriel stepped closer to the large screen and looked at it with her round eyes. She was nervously holding her clipboard tightly against her chest. You realized the weakness of craft and magic fairly quickly, but how about this? Ron thought to himself while looking at Adam's figure on the screen, who was currently standing by the side. Kuruma weaved past yet another attack and then punched one of the players across the face. The punch was powerful and sent the player flying through the air, landing in a crumpled heap on the ground. It still wasn't enough to kill the player. However, it wasn't too far. That punch surprised other players, who were not expecting Kuruma's physical strength to be this scary. At that moment, Kuruma rushed in and delivered a swift kick to the player's head, knocking them out cold. It then swept their legs out from under another player, causing them to fall to the ground with a loud thud. Instantly, something tickled at the back of Kuruma's head, and it instantly took a step backwards, avoiding an arrow that whizzed past its head. It saw a pale-faced archer hiding behind other players. It growled loudly, but then a few other players rushed in. They were Seth, Nico, Donald, and Hannibal. They cut, slashed, stabbed, and hacked. However, Kuruma evaded each one, moving across the ground with grace. It didn't look like its feet had even left the ground. It simply looked like it was skating across ice. Then, Kuruma formed a brick-sized fist with its right hand and slugged Hannibal in the face. It sent him flying to the far corner of the room. Following that, Kuruma low-kicked across Seth's, Nico's, and Donald's legs, knocking them down to the ground. Then, Kuruma rushed in and threw a powerful punch, but before it could reach the target, it felt a strange tingling sensation at the back of the head. Kuruma's choices were either to kill those 3 players or escape. In that split second, Kuruma made its decision and quickly jumped backwards. It had, after all, only 1% of health left. Even with its lack of intelligence, Kuruma knew how to value its life. Aargh. Donald stood back up, feeling an ache in his legs, and then turned to see who saved them. It was none other than Adam, holding his shield in front of him. Adam tried to ram with his shield straight into Kuruma, but as he expected, it decided to dodge. He finally made his move. Ron said while his lips moved into a smile. Now, what will he do? Dakota bit her nails in anticipation. For the whole time, she was waiting for Adam to make his move. She was very curious about how he would decide to deal with this. Maybe he will try to use his speed. Ron said to Dakota, it might not work, but it's definitely worth a shot. Maybe. Dakota said, her eyes fixed on Adam. It is possible to overwhelm someone's Kiryoku with the use of speed. Still, whose is superior, Adam's speed or Kuruma's Kiryoku? Adam doesn't feel like a person who will try to brute force something. Muriel thought to herself and then smiled. Maybe he has something else in store. A silence had fallen over the room. The players were sweating in nervousness while staring at Kuruma. They didn't care about getting the kill anymore, they just wanted the creature to die. They were so close to clearing the 3rd floor, but now, in the last percentage, Kuruma had to become even stronger. They couldn't even touch it. Did you guys notice it? Adam suddenly straightened his back, dropped his guard, and put his shield and sword to his sides. His body was completely unguarded. The players looked at him with quizzical looks. What do you mean? Ramon asked from the side. During the whole fight, Ramon took a passive stance. Whenever Adam gave an order, he attacked the boss and dealt a considerable amount of damage to Kuruma. He would definitely get a lot of points. However, this experience made him wonder about his place at the party and about his future. Currently, he was damage dealer, but he wasn't sure whether that's all he wanted to be. What's Adam's role exactly? Ramon wondered. He is controlling the battlefield like a king. I want that as well. All the players were waiting to hear Adam's words. When you are attacking Kuruma, it knows exactly from where and when the attack will land. It then dodges. We already know that. Donald said with a frown. It was quite obvious, now. Yeah, but is there something else to that? Adam smiled. This must be Kiryoku. One of the 3 powers. However, how does Kuruma know where the attack is coming from? Can it see into the future? I doubt it. It is because Kiryoku is allowing it to detect the attacks, I guess. Donald said with a frown. Yes, but how does it detect the attacks? Adam shot up a question. Is it detecting attacks, or the people attacking? Donald frowned and felt like the answer to the question was within the tip of his tongue. However, he couldn't find the answer. I think it is detecting a person's attacking intent. Adam said with a smile. It is like you are shouting your attack right next to Kuruma, where it will land, and when. It gives Kuruma more than enough time to dodge out of the way. so, how can that be defeated? Donald asked with a frown. We shouldn't have any attacking intent. Exactly. Adam grinned widely. Watch and learn. In the control room. He learned it so quickly. Ron shot to his feet and screamed in shock. How? What in the world? Dakota whispered in shock. Still, how can he stop his own attacking intent? It usually takes years to learn to control it like that. Ron's lips twitched into a large grin. A silver armor suddenly appeared around his body and hugged his muscular frame tightly. On his back, a shield with a crescent serpent symbol appeared, and on his hand, a large sword manifested. I want to fight. Adam approached Kuruma with slow and steady steps. All the players watched with nervous heartbeats. Kuruma held its ground and formed a large fist with its right hand. It was ready to crush the annoying human in front of it with a single blow. This human was the cause and reason for all of its pain so far. At that moment, while walking towards Kuruma, Adam closed his eyes and entered the depths of his mind. His mind was vast, like an endless ocean. It was currently raging, with tall waves crashing against each other. It was like this because of Adam's attacking intention and desire to fight. Snap! But then, Adam snapped his fingers, and the ocean calmed down. It didn't have a single ripple. Not a single wave. It was so eternally calm that it almost seemed unnatural. And just like that, Adam's attacking intent completely vanished. Chapter 53, The Final Lesson. Adam softly opened his eyes with a calm smile on his face. Kuruma stopped moving, its clenched fist loosening slightly. It suddenly lost its connection to Kiryoku. It could feel every other player in the room except Adam. It made it feel strange. It wasn't sure whether Adam was now dead or not. Time to end this. Adam tossed his shield to the side and moved his short sword into a reverse grip. Little God! His leg muscles swelled, threatening to burst through his trousers, and he roared like a wounded beast. His veins popped out of his skin as he let out a final battle cry, channeling all of his remaining energy into one last strike. Crack! The ground beneath him cracked. Donald and other players retreated from Adam, shocked by the aura he was giving off. He looked like an unfathomable creature. His attacking intention is gone. Dakota cried out. If Kuruma's Kiryoku was at a higher level, it could still sense Adam's aura, which is much harder to hide. But, unfortunately for our little chaos being, its Kiryoku is weak. Ron smirked and said, the fight is over. Crack, boom. The ground exploded. Adam launched into the air, flew across the room in a flash of light, and left a light blood trail in its wake. He appeared behind Kuruma, a small smile on his face, and behind him, Kuruma's head dropped to the ground with a thud. Kuruma's tall body collapsed to the ground, lifeless and motionless. Ding, ding. Strange dinging echoed throughout the room, and then stairs appeared from the ground, leading up towards the destroyed ceiling. There, a lonely door made out of walnut stood closed. It was unlocked. It is done. The players cheered, and some of them collapsed on the ground out of exhaustion. Again, he got the kill. Ramon looked at Adam's back, then scoffed and stepped up the stairs towards the door in the ceiling. Hannibal instantly followed after him. Adam moved the back of his hand across his mouth, cleared off the blood, and slowly straightened his back. His legs were shaking, and his face was paler than before, but he still smiled. I forgot about the pleasure of fighting. He chuckled, shook his head, and went to pick up his dropped shield from the ground. After he strapped his shield to his back, he noticed the looks of other players. There was respect, admiration, and a hint of fear in their eyes. It was a look he had gotten very used to in his past life. After all, he was a famous prime mercenary and one of the generals of the Star faction. However, this time it was different. I can't really explain, but I prefer these guys' gazes compared to the awe in my past. Adam thought to himself. I always felt like they wanted something from me, as I was unmarried and wealthy. They never truly cared about me as a person, only what I could provide for them. He shook his head, removed those unwanted memories from his mind, and then followed behind other players as they ascended the stairs to the door above. How many died? Dakota walked over to one of the mercenaries that were working in the control room's far corner. The mercenary nodded and quickly typed something on the holographic keyboard. After finishing the calculations, the mercenary was speechless for a moment. Well. Dakota raised an eyebrow. Z0. The mercenary whispered in shock. No one died. What? Dakota shouted in shock. It was because of Adam. Ron walked over to her, still dressed in his fancy armor. He didn't allow anyone to die. Is this the first time? Dakota asked. It is. Ron chuckled. This is the first time there have been 0 deaths in one of the groups on the 3rd floor. Adam, he. Dakota felt a cold sweat roll down her forehead. A monster, that's what he is. Ron then patted Dakota's shoulder and said, there. Returning. Your lesson should begin, no. Alright. Dakota nodded and looked at him, then asked, are you ready? I am. Ron chuckled. The end of the tutorial starts. Stepping through the walnut door, the players appeared back in the safe area. They all sighed in relief and took seats on the benches, even on the ground. They were all exhausted. However, the most exhausted person, Adam, stayed standing, as he didn't want to look weak. It was important for the tank of the group to stay strong. It made others feel safer knowing that someone powerful was always there to protect their backs. While the players were sharing their plans with their friends, some planned on taking a shower, some planned to go read, and some planned on grabbing something to eat. A door to the side then suddenly swung open, and Dakota, dressed in a fluttering dress with a calm smile, walked over to them. Congratulations to everyone. Dakota said, and her next words caused players to groan. Time for the next lesson. Arg, fuck that. Ramon stood up and rubbed his back. We just finished a long-ass fight. I am going to take a nap. If you refuse the lesson, you'll get kicked out of the tutorial. Dakota said with a smile. So, go on, take a nap. TCH. Ramon clicked his tongue and angrily crossed his arms, but he didn't leave. The players, with annoyance on their faces, followed behind Dakota and soon arrived at the auditorium. They took their usual spots and tried to make themselves comfortable, but the seats weren't that nice. At the back of the auditorium, on the highest seat, Adam sat with a relaxed expression. This was nothing compared to the New World's harsh living conditions. Of course, New World had nice places to sleep, such as guild buildings where there were soft beds and warm blankets. However, sometimes the mercenaries had to sleep out in the wild and inside dungeons where the conditions were much more challenging. At least, in the auditorium, there wasn't a danger of chaos being jumping out of somewhere and attacking you while you were resting. This might bring smiles to your faces, but this is the last lesson of the tutorial. Dakota announced. There were a few sighs of relief, but some players also realized that the tutorial must be near the end. It had been a long 3 weeks, and some started to feel emotional that the ending was so near and they'd be able to meet their families and friends again. The 4th lesson is about the guilds and their tiers. Dakota said and crossed her arms behind her back. We've already sent all the guilds information about each of you and your current success in the tutorial. After the tutorial, some of you might receive guild invitations. In those invitations, that come in a form of letter, should have the name and the ranking of the guild in them. The tiers of the guilds are simple. The weakest guilds are tier 4, and the strongest are 0. There are only 7 guilds in tier O. Those are called 7 ancient guilds. They're quite special, and they won't be inviting any of you. They're not allowed to, otherwise, they would always pick up the best recruits. To keep up the balance between 7 ancient guilds and others, a pact has been made. They're not allowed to recruit members from the tutorial, but they can recruit for their subsidiary guilds, where it is possible to advance to the main guild if you prove yourself. Still, choose wisely. You might never advance, and I suggest taking your time with the decision. There are many other powerful guilds besides 7 ancient guilds where you would be treasured and valued for your talents. It is important to choose a guild that will try to help you grow and reach your full potential. Chapter 54, The Last Hour. Now, after that's been said, Dakota tapped her stick on the blackboard. Besides the guilds, there are other factions, such as Pro-Strong and Church of the God Almighty. They're different from the guilds, as their members are almost in every guild. However, they have their own sets and beliefs, and they can be quite dangerous if crossed. As a new mercenary, I suggest avoiding Pro-Strong members as much as possible. They believe that the weak, such as you all, should be slaves from the beginning. Only if you become stronger can you escape slave status. What the players murmured with each other, shocked by such a thought. Seth raised his arm and asked, "Why do they think so?" In the new world, strength is everything. Dakota formed a fist and placed it on her chest. The weak have no real part in that world except to get stronger. So, a thought has been created that they would be of better use as slaves for stronger mercenaries. The players stayed silent. However, it is very inhumane, so that thought is not shared by the majority. Dakota said. Only King Moriarty can make slavery legal. However, luckily for everyone, he doesn't share that ideology. The players sighed in relief and made a mental note to avoid those pro-strong lunatics. The Church of God Almighty is a tamer organization. They worship God Almighty, the creator of this world. However, they're very religious and devoted to their beliefs. They can also be dangerous. Then, there are some other factions, some that are staying in the shadows. Dakota finished and wiped the scribbling off the blackboard. If you, one day, become strong enough, you may also create your own guild. Dakota said. You'll need to be Royal Mercenary in order to do so. I created my own guild, Platinum Mercenaries, as soon as I was able to. Adam thought to himself. They were fiercely loyal to me. However, the ones that I thought were most loyal, ended up betraying me in the end. Adam clicked his tongue as he again remembered those few faces. Liam, Lisa, Nicholas, and Amelia were the ones who suggested making a guild between the 5 of them. Since Adam was the only one who had reached Royal Mercenary at that point, he became the guild leader. He didn't really want to, but he thought it would be fun with his friends. His guild managed to grow exponentially in a short amount of time. Therefore, his guild became one of the strongest forces in Star Faction. I don't really know what I'll do in this life. Adam sighed and scratched the back of his head. Anyway, this will be the end of the lesson. Dakota put down her stick and added, remember, choose your guild wisely. It could determine your fate in the new world. The players nodded and stood up while stretching their numbgone limbs. They also started talking with their friends loudly, instantly engulfing the auditorium with loud voices. At that moment, the door swung open with loud enough force to silence all the chatter. The players saw Ron waltz into the room, a cold expression on his face. Everyone! Ron shouted loudly. Go to your quarters, pack up your stuff. This is the last hour you're in the safe area. You only have an hour to pack up. Once you're done, meet up in front of the 4th floor's door. Following that, Ron left the auditorium, leaving behind shocked players. Without even a second passing, the players started whispering about what the hell was going on. They then realized that this was the final stage in the tutorial. Today, the tutorial will end. Adam stood up, yawned shortly, and then left the auditorium with his hands inside his pockets. He headed straight to his quarters to pack up his stuff. Adam! Donald shouted from behind and ran to catch him. Yes. Adam didn't turn around and continued walking straight. Do you think this will be the end? Donald asked while panting nervously. The end of the tutorial. Yes. Adam said with a nod. The 4th floor opens in an hour. Go prepare yourself, it is the last push. Damn, this is ruthless. Donald panted heavily. We're all exhausted, and now this. This is nothing compared to what mercenaries have to suffer day and night. Adam said. Ah, what do you mean? I have heard some stuff, such as some boss fights lasting for 3 days. The longest fight has lasted for 7 days. It isn't uncommon for a fight to last over a day. Imagine having to constantly be on edge to fight for that long. This is nothing compared to this. 7 days. Donald exclaimed. They take breaks, right? There is no way it is possible to stay awake for that long. Breaks, ha, right. Adam chuckled. That is, unfortunately, not an option. 7 days, non-stop, fighting. That is insane. Donald touched the back of his head and then gritted his teeth. This is nothing compared to that. I'll have to push through. See you and good luck. Adam reached his door, opened it with his keys, and entered. Donald watched as the door closed and started heading in the direction of his room. He was still thinking about fighting for 7 days. It made him respect the mercenaries that had to go through that. Adam packed up some of the clothes he had purchased and stuffed them inside his backpack. He then grabbed some of his food rations, filled the water canteen with water, and put them inside his neatly arranged backpack. Then he placed it on the floor and sat down on the soft bed. MHM. He rubbed his neck, loosening his muscles as he let out a contented sigh. The last push. Knock, knock. Come in. Adam turned to the door, which opened, and a sweet-smiled woman walked in. Muriel. You finished packing? Muriel asked as she looked at the neat and tidy room. Yeah, I was about to get going. Adam said, slung the backpack over his shoulder, and stood up slowly, as if the backpack weighed a ton. Good luck. This will be the last test. Muriel said. I'll be going to talk with the Council of Mercenaries. They're the ones that eventually decide the final score. Are the Council of Mercenaries going to watch the final test? Adam asked. Muriel nodded. Yes, they will be watching. After that, we handlers have to tell the council what score we should give to our recruit. We have to convince them. I see. Adam nodded and sighed heavily. I did everything I could. I hope it was enough. Muriel looked at him with a deep look. She then softly nodded and said, I believe it was. I'll also try my best. Thanks. Adam chuckled, walked past her, and opened the door. Farewell. With that, he left the room, and his footsteps grew distant. Muriel walked over to the light switch, flicked it to turn off the lights, and then stepped out of the room. There were keys inside the lock. Those were Adam's keys. She took them and pocketed them, then she closed the door. Muriel touched the door with a sense of finality and then walked away. I'll also do everything I can. Muriel straightened her back, raised her chin, and marched away confidently. I'll also do everything I can to make sure Adam gets what he deserves. Chapter 55, The Boss. The players, around 30 of them, stood in 6 different rows. They looked like a military unit preparing for the battle. In front of them all, Ron stood with one hand holding a sword and another one holding a shield. He emitted a powerful aura that instilled fear and respect in all who looked at him. Follow me. With that simple order, Ron turned around and stepped through the door to the 4th floor. The players, hesitant at first, followed right behind him. First, it was the leftmost row, then the right one, until all 6 rows of players had stepped through the door. This was the last time that this group of players were seen in the safe area. After a flash of light had passed, the players opened their eyes to an amazing view. They were standing on a long stairway that led up into the starry sky. The stairway was hovering in the air with no visible means of support. Ah! The players cried out, some of them almost even fell off the stairs in their shock. This is the 4th floor. Donald looked around in amazement. How mystifying! Ron continued walking up the stairs, his boots echoing loudly with each step. Only one person was following him, it was Adam. Then, other players woke up from their shock and quickly followed after them. It looked like the staircase led all the way to the space above. It just continued stretching on and on, seemingly without end. At that moment, it was as if the reality around them shifted, the distance between them and the sky shrank rapidly until they all took the final steps on the stairway and stepped onto a starry platform. The platform had stars engraved all over its surface, twinkling and shimmering in the darkness. The platform was surrounded by the starry sky on all sides, creating a mesmerizing and enchanting atmosphere. The platform hovered in the air without any support and was as high as the clouds themselves. It was an experience unlike any other. Those with a fear of heights felt their stomachs churn with anxiety as they looked down at the vast expanse below. Ron stopped in the middle of the platform, then turned 180 degrees and faced all the players, who were amazed by the view. "Excuse me, where is the boss?" Seth asked, his voice trembling with slight anxiety. "This is the boss room, right?" "That's right, this is the boss room." Ron nodded. "Then where is the boss?" Ramon asked with a prideful voice. "I like the view and all, but I would like to leave the tutorial already." "Well, about that." Ron chuckled and stabbed his sword through the platform's floor. "I am the boss." After the words echoed throughout the sky, the players exclaimed and cried out in shock. "You're the boss? What the hell?" "Ah ha ha ha." Ramon laughed slowly and grinned sinisterly. "I see now. So, mind sharing your rank with us?" "My rank is Grandeur," Ron said. "It is the 6th rank in the mercenary hierarchy. Grandeurs are considered quite powerful, they are usually part of the core of the guild." "I see." Ramon licked his lips and asked, "How strong are you from us?" "Strong enough that even 1,000 of you wouldn't be able to beat me." Ron said it with a cold voice. "Ha, humble one," Ramon jokingly said, but he could feel the unfathomable pressure sinking his shoulders down. He knew that defeating Ron wasn't an option. It wasn't even a possibility. "How the hell can we clear this floor then?" Seth asked in urgency. "Clearing this floor has different requirements," Ron said, and then, his fancy armor started disappearing into pixels, revealing a skin-tight black shirt that outlined his perfect muscles. "You only need to land a scratch on me, and you all will clear the floor." "Only a scratch? That should be easy enough." "It must be much harder than the 3rd floor, so be prepared." "That's right, if Ron knows Kiryoku, we can't even land a hit on him." Ron, hearing all the discussions, smiled in amusement. "Also, to make it even easier, I won't use any of the 3 powers or my skills. It will only be my sword and shield." Hearing that, players felt excited and more confident about this upcoming challenge. However, there were a few players who weren't as naive. Those were Ramon, Hannibal, Adam, and Donald. They wore solemn expressions as they had a hunch that this wasn't going to be as easy as Ron made it sound. "Whenever you all are ready." Ron chuckled, pulled out his sword from the ground, and faced the group of players. At that moment, all the players noticed something strange. The shield and sword were exactly the same as what Adam had been using. It was the ordinary steel short sword and the round shield. This meant Ron wasn't even planning to use his vastly better weapons. He planned to use the same poor weapons as them. How much is he handicapping himself? Facing 30 of us can't be that easy for him. That thought was shared by the majority of the players. They started to feel increasing concern. They all knew that Ron was stronger than them, but not by how much. "Come on, didn't you guys want to leave?" Ron laughed. This is your chance. The players hesitated, none of them wanted to be the first to attack. At that moment, one player rushed past the players and swung his sword at Ron. Ha 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 ha. Ron laughed after seeing who it was. Come on, show me what you're made of. Adam. Clang. Adam's short sword clashed with Ron's sword. The sparks flew as they clashed in a fierce confrontation. Crack K. Adam sidestepped to the side, moved to Ron's side with amazing speed, and then drove his sword towards his exposed waist. At that moment, Ron's shield came down and parried the stabbing sword away. Adam changed the grip on his sword slightly, then thrust it upwards towards Ron's chest. Ron chuckled in amusement and took a slow step to the side, avoiding the thrust with time to spare. Adam quickly moved his shield and rammed straight at Ron, but as if he expected it, he blocked the ramming attempt with his own shield. The two shields clashed, but Adam couldn't force Ron to take a single step backwards. It was a clear difference in physical strength. Is that all? Ron asked with a laugh. Where is that speed of yours? Adam silently reeled back his sword, then started stabbing repeatedly towards Ron's face. Each stab was designed to deliver instant kill. He was fighting to kill his opponent. Ron chuckled and weaved through the rain of stabs with a smile on his face. It looks so effortless. Isn't he using Kiryoku? The players wondered to themselves as this resembled Kuruma's movements. However, Adam knew the truth. He isn't using Kiryoku, it is just that all of my attacks look like they're moving in slow motion. In Ron's eyes, his speed is just beyond our comprehension. As Ron weaved through another wave of stabs, his ears perked up as he heard some noise. He quickly spun around and blocked a machete strike with his shield. Oh, you might become a nice assassin. Ron chuckled as he looked at the grim-looking Ramon. I almost didn't hear you. Chapter 56, Unarmed Combat. Now! Ramon shouted. Ron's eyebrow jumped, and in that moment, Hannibal jumped from his blind spot with a large knife in hand. Ramon instantly rushed to tackle Ron, planning to wrap his arms around him so he couldn't dodge. Tricks! Ron spat out as he easily sidestepped Ramon's tackle and delivered a swift punch to his stomach. Ramon fell down on his knees, clutching his abdomen in pain. Hannibal swung his knife down, but then Ron grabbed him by the wrist with his shield-wielding hand and twisted it, causing the knife to drop to the ground. Then he brought Hannibal's arm down, forcing him down to the ground. Go to sleep, Ron said and smashed the sword's hilt into Hannibal's head. Hannibal reeled back, leaving a small bleeding dent in his head, and then slowly fell to the ground. He was still alive but had lost his consciousness. A nice attempt, Ron said with a smile. My abilities are still above that. At that moment, a steel blade appeared behind his back, about to go straight through him, but then Ron tilted his body to the side. The blade went right past him, nearly scratching him. Oh! Ron turned to Adam, who was holding the sword, with a smile on his face. I shouldn't forget you. Adam didn't look frustrated that his attack was near success. He moved alongside his sword, ran past Ron, and then turned around to face him once more. Donald, watching the fight, steeled his nerves and clutched his sword tightly, ready to join the fray. Guys, we can only do this if we work together. Donald shouted to all the players near him. Let's put pressure on Ron, we can't defeat him alone. The players gritted their teeth, then, with a loud scream, they rushed forward towards Ron. He was the only obstacle left in this long tutorial. He was the final obstacle. Ron looked over his shoulder and then moved his sword in front of him, blocking another attack from Adam. He launched the attack as soon as Ron's eyes moved elsewhere. However, Ron was prepared for it. Now it is getting interesting, Ron said and turned back to Adam with a smile. Take a break, Adam. I'll test the others real quick. Adam's eyebrows furrowed, but at that moment, Ron's high kick landed on his head. It came so quickly and so unexpectedly that he didn't have any chance of dodging it. His eyes rolled back to his skull, and he slowly fell to the ground. Adam fell unconscious. Ron turned back to the players, smiled, and walked calmly towards them. The players, over 20 of them, attacked Ron from all angles. From low, from high, from middle, and even from behind. He was surrounded. Ron placed his shield in front of him and then swung it in front of him. The shield made a loud noise as it blocked the first few hits, but the players were relentless. The other attacks approached him from all directions. Interesting, Ron said casually, and then he raised his sword and ordinarily swung it around him. It was a 360-degree slash. It didn't hit anyone, but then a powerful shockwave struck all the players and blew them away. The players groaned loudly and desperately stopped themselves from moving any further back, as there was danger of falling off the platform. Then it would be a very long fall to the bottom. Ron smiled in amusement, but then heard rapid panting from behind him and quickly moved his shield behind him. A sword landed on his shield and made a loud noise. RGGHH. Donald gritted his teeth as his attack failed. You followed up quickly. Were you out of the range of my shockwave attack? Ron looked impressed. Not bad at all. I plan to have others act as decoys, and then I'll finish off Ron with a sneak attack. He still managed to block my attack. I still don't approve of your fighting style. Ron said coldly. You're way too ready to sacrifice others. Ron slowly sheathed his sword and strapped his shield to his back. He wasn't holding any weapons now. I'll make it even easier for you guys, I'll just use my hands. Ron said, the confidence evident in his voice. A small distance away, Adam regained his consciousness and touched his aching head with an uncomfortable look. He kicked at my temple. Adam shook his head and stood back up. He then regained his focus and saw what was happening in the fight. Ron was standing without weapons, and other players looked disheveled. It didn't look like the fight was going well. That bastard is strong. Ramon walked to him, still clutching his abdomen. We need to come up with a plan quickly before it's too late. Adam looked at him and chuckled. I didn't take you as a team player. Hey, I followed the lead on the third floor, didn't I? Ramon scoffed. I suppose. Adam rolled his tongue inside his mouth and said, there aren't any plans that would work against Ron. He is far too strong. We just need to land a single scratch on him. How hard can that be? Ramon asked in frustration. It is hard, incredibly so, Adam said. I don't think you still realize the difference in our and Ron's abilities. He could have already defeated us if he wanted to. So fucking what? This cannot be an impossible test. Ramon shouted angrily. It isn't impossible. Adam picked up his shield and sword from the ground, then said, however, defeating him is very much impossible. Ramon watched as Adam started walking towards Ron. What are you doing now? Fight, that's pretty much all we can do. Adam said. Back at the fight, Donald swung his broadsword, each swing was very wide and sloppy. Ron dodged them all while barely moving. Your swordsmanship is poor, very much so. Ron raised his leg and said, that's one thing you must train. Then he kicked Donald very hard in the thigh, sending him sprawling to the ground. The kick sounded like a gunshot. Oh, you woke up. Ron turned around and saw Adam walking towards him. Not bad. His eyes then went to Hannibal, who was still lying on the ground. He was knocked out cold, and it didn't look like he was going to wake up any time soon. I needed the rest. Adam said and moved into a fighting stance. Thank you for that. No problem. Ron moved his hands in front of him, looking like he was about to grapple. I've been itching for a good sparring partner. Unarmed combat. Adam shrugged his shoulders and dropped his shield and sword to the ground. It's been some time since I've fought someone with fists. It doesn't hurt to know unarmed combat. Ron said with a smile. In the new world, there are some people who fight with their fists. Their fists can crack mountains, split the earth, and destroy forests. Adam moved his right hand beside his shoulder and his left hand near his waist, and his feet were positioned shoulder width apart. Boxing? Ron asked with a raised eyebrow. Any prior experience? A little, Adam said, and then lunged forward. During the lunge, he lowered his stance and threw over-shoulder punch with perfect form and precision. Ron moved his hand to grab the fist, but at that moment, the fist disappeared. It never connected with Ron's hand. Adam disappeared from his field of vision. Ron's eyes panicked slightly, and then he lowered his gaze just enough to see that Adam was going for a tackle. That punch was a feint. He punched, then did a feint into a tackle. Ron thought with amazement and then quickly grabbed Adam by his shoulders before he could finish his tackle. At that moment, Adam wrapped his arms behind Ron's legs, then lifted him up and slammed him to the ground with all his strength. Crack! Chapter 57, Adam vs. Ron. Arg! Adam groaned loudly, veins bulging on his forehead. He just doesn't move. Oh, a nice try. Ron chuckled, his legs firmly rooted on the ground, with Adam trying desperately to lift them up. Adam's tackle desperately failed. At first, Adam managed to lift him up and start throwing him towards the ground. However, somehow, Ron managed to bring his feet back down to the ground and completely nullify his tackling attempt. Your tackle lacked the strength and technique needed to take me down, Ron taunted, then grabbed Adam by his left shoulder and threw him to the ground instead. Adam's back crashed to the ground, a loud groan escaping his lips. You are definitely good at striking, but your tackle needs work. Ron said and then chuckled. You're not actually good at wrestling, aren't you? You just wanted to bring me down, as that counts as your victory. A nice attempt. You caught me. Adam groaned and stood back up, his back slightly bruised and bleeding from the rough landing. He never planned to challenge Ron in wrestling. He only needed to bring him down, and that counted as a victory for them. Unfortunately, the strength difference was just so immense that he was unable to finish his tackle. You couldn't get a good grip of my other leg. Ron looked at Adam's hand, which missed 2 fingers. Real unfortunate. Even if I had my fingers, my tackle still would have failed. Adam said. When I tackled you, it felt like I was trying to move a mountain. Yeah, the difference in level between us is just too much. Ron sighed, actually feeling frustrated by it. I wish I was able to control my brain processing speed, like some others are. I would be able to lower my reaction time and speed to match yours. I want to fight you on equal ground someday, maybe once you've reached my level. At that moment, Adam put his arms close to his chest and rushed at Ron. He immediately reached close range, planning to take this fight to the next level. What's your next plan? Ron formed fists with his hands and smirked. What kind of fighting style will you use now? Adam stomped on the ground, twisted his waist, and threw a straight punch. His shoulder rotated, and his body lunged forward with full force. Ron caught the punch and made it slide past him, causing Adam's balance to falter and his body to be unguarded. At that moment, Adam revealed his thumb from his clenched fist and thrust it straight towards Ron's eye. Ron quickly moved his head out of the way, his eyes slightly shaking. He was not expecting Adam to fight back so fiercely. After the thumb strike missed, Adam took a step closer, placed his arm beside his waist, and threw a powerful straight punch. It looked like a punch from traditional karate. Ron narrowed his eyes and elbowed the fist away before it could make contact. The fingers of the fist looked bruised. Ron then raised his leg and did a low kick towards Adam's knee. Adam quickly jumped over the kick and did a front kick to Ron's chest. However, he caught it by the ankle and then slammed Adam straight to the ground. Crack! Arg! Adam groaned, and he thought he heard his spine crack in half. Since I can still move, I didn't just get paralyzed. Adam thought to himself, then jumped back to his feet, sweating furiously because of the intense confrontation. You showed that you can fight with great skill, but you're still not using your greatest weapon. Ron cracked his knuckles and asked, "Come on, show me your speed." "No worries, you'll see something even beyond that." Adam moved into a cat stance. It was a traditional stance in martial arts. He had one foot in front of the other, his weight evenly distributed. The front foot stood on its toes, while the other was flat on the ground. His hands were open-palmed, placed near his waist, and his back was completely straight with his head facing forward. "Well then, show me." Ron pounced forward like a wild beast. With lightning speed, he appeared in front of Adam and threw a punch so powerful that it caused the air to explode around them. Adam slid his foot to the side and barely dodged the punch. He then jabbed two of his fingers towards Ron's exposed eyes. Again with that. Ron caught the hand with ease and twisted it, causing Adam to wince in pain. Adam intentionally dropped down to his knees and swiped his leg out, aiming to trip Ron. Ron steeled his leg's muscles and blocked the attempt without any difficulty. His leg didn't move an inch. Another failed attempt. Adam placed his hands under him and flipped himself over, landing on his 2 feet without a smile on his face. Then he rushed in and moved into a different stance. This time it was a flicker stance from boxing. He started throwing jabs, one after another. Ron furrowed his brows and weaved through the jabs without any difficulty. What's the point in all of this? He should know that these attacks have no chance of hitting me. In a dimly lit room with a large screen and lots of chairs, it looked like a cinema. On the large screen, 7 shadowy figures sat on their high-end chairs. Most of them looked bored, leaning against the backrest or leaning against their arms. There were a few who continued watching with straight backs and intense focus, their eyes never leaving the screen. In the room, around 30 handlers, stood patiently with their heads slightly bowed. Some of them were fidgeting nervously, while others appeared calm and collected. There was another screen for them to watch, a smaller screen that showed the battle on the 4th floor. "How much time is left?" one of the 7 shadowy figures asked. One of the handlers brought out a timepiece and said, 5 minutes. "Hey, they've already been on 4th floor 55 minutes. It looks like they weren't able to harm Ron, after all." Not a surprise. The 4th floor is rarely completed fully, after all. Unless one has an S-ranked candidate in the group, it is very difficult. Still, I suppose this group has some decent recruits. This, Adam Palestar, is the top recruit, was he not? He was, indeed, the one who has made quite a ruckus. He is a decent fighter and has some prior fighting experience. What's his rank going to be? It looks like an A ranker to me. Yeah. Agreed. At the back of the room, Muriel clenched her hands and looked at the screen. This ain't enough. He deserves so much more. Adam, it is time to show why you belong among those monsters. Adam reeled in his fist and dodged a slow punch from Ron. He then backed off till he arrived next to his dropped shield and sword. Enough of unarmed combat. Ron saw that and asked with a grin. Unarmed combat is dead end. Adam said without emotion in his tone. I'll never be able to touch you. And I'm done trying. Hey! Ron's eyebrow jumped. At that moment, Adam picked up his shield and sword, then stood up slowly, his back slowly straightening out. The time limit is almost up. Adam thought to himself. This floor has a time limit of 1 hour. Once that is up, the 4th floor is over. Every player still clears the floor and has successfully finished the tutorial. Ron's job was to show the difference between his and our strengths. Coin feeders have to know the extreme difference in strength so they won't foolishly go pick fights in the new world. He was never supposed to kill us or anything. Just to teach us a lesson, that's why he has stopped multiple lethal blows and has been holding back on all of his attacks. The boss of the 4th floor is rarely defeated because it is just so hard for Coin Feeder to land an attack on someone of Ron's skill level. However, every S-ranker so far has cleared it. If I don't, there is no way I'll be one. It is time to show what little god is really capable of. It's not only speed. Chapter 58, Historic. Those two are monsters. Seth thought to himself as he watched Adam and Ron fight each other. While Ron was clearly stronger and faster, Adam was equally impressive. His unarmed combat techniques were very high level. It was clear that he had prior experience. It made Seth feel small and insignificant. He had never fought before going to the tutorial. Not even in school. He never brawled with his friends or classmates. Brother, how could I possibly survive in the new world if there are people like Ron around every corner? Seth gulped, fear slipping into his mind. I don't think I am cut out for this. His glasses, covering his dark blue eyes, reflected Adam's unfazed expression. I am not like him, and I am not like Donald or Ramon. They're all special. I am nobody. He then heard some whispers from nearby players. Maybe we should attack while Ron is distracted. A short-haired player suggested to his friend. As if that would work. His friend scoffed at the idea. Ron has ears like a fox and a nose like a dog. He can hear us coming from a mile away. A sneak attack, ha, that has already failed so many times. Ron looked at his hand, which was holding an ordinary pitchfork. In the 3rd floor, I dealt some damage to Kuruma, but that's pretty much my only contribution to this tutorial so far. Will I even be able to become a mercenary as I am now? Brother, mother, father, I am their final hope. I was supposed to become mercenary, become rich, and get out of poverty. I don't think I can do it. I am weak. Seth's hands trembled, and his nails dug deep into his palm. He bit his lip, spilling blood down his chin. He looked up at the sky, tears streaming down his face. I hate this. Why did my brother have to fail? I didn't want this responsibility. God damn it! Seth screamed to himself and slapped himself in the face. The nearby players looked at him with strange expressions. They didn't understand what the hell was going on with him. Ron picked up his sword and shield from the ground. So, what are you planning to show me? He laughed as he raised his weapons. Adam looked over Ron's shoulder, caught sight of someone, and then turned back to Ron. This is my pinnacle. Adam took a deep breath, placed the shield in front of him, and softly opened his eyes. His heart started pounding against his chest as if it were trying to burst through. His legs and arm muscles swelled, the veins bulged, and danced around his forearms like fiery serpents. Little god style, I am thee. Adam's eyes slammed open, and he then flashed forward with a speed that surpassed any human capability, leaving only a blur of motion in his wake. The cycle of life. Ron's eyes slammed wide open, and he quickly sidestepped. In that very instant, Adam struck a powerful blow that shattered the ground where Ron had just been standing. Ron barely managed to dodge out of the way, just in time. What the hell is this power? Ron thought to himself in shock. This is not what Coin Feeder should be capable of doing. The cycle of death. Adam rushed after Ron and thrust his sword toward him. Ron put his shield up just in time to block the blow. Boom! The impact rocked the shield and shockingly made Ron take a single step back. What in the world? Ron's eyes shook furiously. He pushed me back. I have a favor to ask. Adam said, catching his breath. Can you do that for me? What is it? Ron asked with a frown. Can you give me the flask of setting sun and the flask of rising moon? Adam asked with blood draining from his face. Why? Ron asked with a strange look. Because after this. Adam chuckled and grinned. I might die. Ron's heart sank as he realized the seriousness of the situation. What kind of person is he? What was he taught? His own body can't handle the power of his techniques. Is he a pupil of one of the legendary martial arts schools that has already gone into seclusion? I don't think any other place can create this kind of monster. Ron pulled out his interface and brought out 2 flasks. One had greyish liquid while the other one had golden. They were the flasks of the setting sun and rising moon. He tossed them over to Adam, who caught them and stored them inside his inventory. I appreciate it. Adam coughed uncontrollably, blood dribbling down his chin. Ron moved out of his fighting stance and brought out his timepiece. There was only 1 minute left. I enjoyed this, I indeed did. Ron said and then sighed. I guess I still prevailed. Did you now? Adam wiped the blood off his lips and took a deep breath. I haven't gotten this far just to fail at the finishing line. Crack! With a powerful stomp, Adam vanished from the view. He moved around the platform with such speed that not a single player managed to see him, except Ron. Ron looked around with his hawk-like eyes and managed to keep track of Adam. He still had to agree that he was quite fast. Still, he was faster. As Adam was about to launch an attack, Ron vanished from sight and appeared right in front of him. He moved with such speed that he even created an afterimage that tricked Adam into thinking he was still where he had been. Not bad. Ron said with a smirk and a twinkle in his eyes. I bet you didn't see this coming. He then grabbed Adam by his collar and brought him back down to the ground, laughing triumphantly. Crash! After the dust cleared, Adam coughed blood. His health had dropped all the way to the bottom. He only had a few health points left. Ron stood over him in victory. That was a nice fight. Ron laughed and checked his timepiece. And the time's over. He was about to offer his hand to Adam to help him stand up, but then everything around him started to look hazy and disorientating. Adam and all the players looked like they were fading away into nothingness. The sky turned green, and all the stars seemed to glow brighter than ever before. What the hell is going on? At that moment, Ron's vision turned dark. Oh my god! What the fuck? All the players shouted in shock all around the platform. They were all in shock. Everyone watching couldn't believe their eyes. On the ground, Ron's eyes looked blank, and he was drooling from his mouth. Adam, on the other hand, had his legs wrapped around his neck, squeezing tight. Adam had put Ron into a triangle hold without him noticing a thing, and now, Ron's eyes looked blank as if he was unconscious. Ah ha ha ha! Adam stared into Ron's unconscious eyes and laughed. I am actually pretty good at grappling. I tricked you. Checkmate, Ron. For the first time ever, on the 4th floor, the boss since the destruction of the respawn crystal had been defeated. Adam, as coin feeder, had defeated a powerhouse of grandeur rank. The 4th floor erupted into cheers and applause. The most shocking thing in the history of the tutorial just happened. In the history of the entire Mortal Online, this was something extremely rare. Chapter 59, Near Death. Ah! Ron's eyes slammed open, and he sat up with cold sweat rolling down his forehead. He looked around with shaking eyes and trembling lips. He then saw Adam patting dust off his trousers and standing up. The players were celebrating their victory. What the? Ron touched his neck, feeling tight. No, that isn't possible. Yo, you got rolled. Ramon's taunting voice came from behind him. Ron turned around and saw a grinning Ramon. He then asked, how long was I unconscious? Only about 3 to 4 seconds. Ramon smirked. That's still our victory, no. That long. Ron touched his head with a shocked expression. In a life and death match, Adam would have killed me. What in the world happened? Adam stood silently, touching his chest. He was pale-faced, as if all blood were drained from his face. Something was happening to his body. The devouring is about to start. With the flasks of the setting sun and rising moon I have a chance to survive, but I will need to act quickly. Adam. At that moment, Ron spoke up and stood up with trembling legs. Tell me how you defeated me. You want to know everything. Adam stopped touching his chest and turned to Ron with a raised eyebrow. Yes, I need to know. Ron said, taking deep breaths. First of all, I tricked you. Adam raised one finger. Tricked. Ron frowned. That tackle that failed, I intentionally did it badly. Adam said. This made you less wary of my grappling abilities. Instead, I made you only focus on my striking. That was an important part of the plan. Second, I never used my top speed, not even against Kuruma. I knew that if I saved it for later, it would catch you off guard and give me a chance. At the end of the match, as you slammed me to the ground, I wrapped my legs around your neck with my top speed. You couldn't react in time, as you thought you already knew the limits of my speed. Third, you thought I gave up on unarmed combat as I picked up my sword and shield. I never did. I always planned on using grappling as my final gambit. Lastly, I had to make you believe that you've won. As you grabbed me by the collar and slammed me to the ground, your muscles loosened and your mind eased, causing your reaction time to slow down. That was when my setup was finally completed. You fell right into my trap. Unbelievable. Ron whispered in shock. I got tricked by mere coin feeder. I was lucky, it was a big gamble. Adam said. If you hadn't limited yourself, if you had used Kiryoku, it would have never worked. In a real match, without any restrictions, I would have a 0% chance of victory. There's one thing I can't understand. Ron said with a frown. Before everything went dark, I saw strange illusions. It was why I didn't see that I was put on a triangle chokehold. Adam smiled and thought to himself. Little God style, coiling serpent. Little God has the ability to create illusions that can deceive even the most skilled fighters. After I put him into a triangle hold, I put Ron under a small illusion. Again, it would have never worked if Ron had used Kiryoku. This illusion skill is also weak, as I am only a coin feeder, it becomes more powerful alongside me. I was indeed lucky that Ron decided to limit himself to this extent. Your mind probably played some tricks on you. Donald approached the two. With that speed and strength, your supply of oxygen was stopped so suddenly that your brain played some tricks on you. Maybe. Ron said as he rubbed his head. It doesn't matter, the truth is that I lost. At first, they only had to scratch Ron to clear this floor. If they had, it wouldn't have counted as Ron's loss. However, now that he lost his consciousness, he actually lost. It was something unheard of. There was a gap of 6 ranks between the two combatants. Rumble. At that moment, the platform started shaking, and from the ground, a flight of stairs appeared that led 15 meters into the sky. Then, at the top of the stairs, a glowing door appeared. It was a strange door. It was a white door with angel wings that were slowly flapping up and down, emitting a soft golden light. Ron looked at the door, let out a sigh, and said, "The door to the 5th floor is open. You all have officially cleared the tutorial." After hearing that, the players erupted in cheers. Some heaved sighs of relief, some were nervous about scores, but they were all excited about finally leaving the tutorial. It had been a long month. The players started rushing up the stairs towards the door. I lost, hey. Ron turned to Adam, who was strangely standing still and not speaking a word. Still, I don't feel too bad. I lost to a very special individual. At that moment, Adam fell down to his knees and coughed up black blood. He wasn't looking good at all. Are you all right? Ron kneeled in front of him and asked in worry. His body is breaking apart. What kind of techniques was taught to him that his own body couldn't handle? Why yet, just give a moment. Adam breathed heavily. Inside his body, a bloody snake head appeared from his heart and started hissing menacingly. Then, the snake head started to slither inside him, devouring him from the inside out. I am about to die. Adam whispered inventory and, with a shaky hand, brought out the 2 flasks of vastly different colored liquids. The flask of the setting sun and rising moon. Ron thought to himself. That's why he wanted those. Those are the only things that can save him. Adam popped open the 2 flasks and grabbed both. However, he wasn't drinking them yet. He was waiting for the devouring to end. If I drink these before the devouring is over, the little god will still continue to consume my insides. I have to drink these once the devouring is over to fix everything. Why isn't he drinking? Ron frowned. Adam looked extremely sickly and weak as he sat there, staring at the flasks in his hands. His insides were a mess. Little God left nothing behind except a beating heart and a soul that was slowly fading away. At that moment, little God vanished into a mist of blood. Now, Adam moved the flasks to his lips and started drinking both of them at once, hoping it wasn't too late to save himself. While traversing through his throat, the 2 liquids mixed with each other, creating a violent reaction that sent excruciating pain throughout his entire body. Deal with it, it is just pain. Adam's veins bulged out of his flesh, and he looked like he was about to burst. At last, the medicine started to work its magic, and all of his internal organs started to restore themselves to their usual state. His broken flesh slowly began to heal, and the color returned to his face. His 2 missing fingers magically appeared, and the broken fingers of his other hand, which were broken by Ron's elbow strike, began to straighten out and reconnect as well. HAAA. Adam let out a relieved sigh. It sounded like he had been holding his breath for far too long. You all right? Ron asked, wanting to make sure. Yeah, I am great. Adam slowly stood up and smiled. Shall we also leave for the 5th floor? Chapter 60, the 5th floor. In the dimly lit room, the large screen showed the 7 shadowy figures. There was a silence. All the handlers had shocked expressions. This was an outcome none of them expected. On the other hand, Muriel had the brightest smile on her beautiful face. She had been so nervous that her smile was a mixture of relief and joy. This changes things. One of the shadowy figures said with a voice of clear surprise. It showed just how monumental this moment was. None of them ever expected this to happen. This doesn't change anything. A rough-sounding figure shouted. That fool Ron lost his guard like a fool. Come on, Mr. Hawthorne, we all know that it wasn't that. A pleasant-sounding woman said. A better strategy won. Adam perfectly used his weaknesses to his advantage. Hawthorne slammed his hand on the chair's armrest and shouted. Ron was idiotic, that's all. This doesn't change anything. It changes everything. A handsome-sounding voice said. I would say that was worthy of receiving an S rank. Ha, are you nuts? Hawthorne screamed. If that's all you need to get S rank, we might as well give it to everyone. Hawthorne, don't be like that. We all know why you don't want to give him an S rank. It is because your precious Calamity would lose his status as the latest S ranker. S rank is something special. Hawthorne screamed. We will lose all of our faces if Adam ends up being another mediocre fool. From what I've seen, sure, he seems like a decent recruit, but S ranker? No way. Calm down, you two. An old voice said, we should ask his handler, shouldn't we? All 7 powerful eyes landed on Muriel. She felt pressure that she had never experienced before. Still, she looked very composed and professional. Sirs, madams, Muriel bowed. What rank do you think your recruit deserves? One of them asked. S rank. Muriel said without any hesitation. Ha! Hawthorne scoffed. You're a rookie handler, aren't you? You couldn't possibly know what S-rank entails. I know. Muriel shouted. S-rankers are the future of the new world. They will lead the new generation of mercenaries. Do you think Adam is part of that future? One of them asked. I don't only think that, I believe he will lead that future. Muriel declared it with confidence. He is special. It is not only the way he fights, but also the way he moves, acts, and talks. Everything about him screams greatness. I am willing to be my life on him. The 7 figures of the Council of Mercenaries stayed quiet. They were all thinking about something. Handlers have special eyes. That's why they're the ones dealing with the recruits, not the hired players. That's why I think we should listen to her. Zephyr, come on. Hawthorne said with disdain. Should we really trust a judgment of mere original? Muriel's eyebrow twitched, but she continued to keep her calm facade. She had learned to deal with the racism and prejudice that came with being an original in a world dominated by players. While the originals had a greater population, the players had the power of the system. It made them like gods in the eyes of many, but she refused to let that intimidate her. I guess we only have one thing to do. The man with the old voice said, we'll have to vote. There are 7 of us, meaning there won't be a chance of a tie vote. I agree. Fine, let's do that. Muriel bit her lip and prayed. Please, please, please. Adam stepped through a door and entered a cozy-looking cottage that resembled the first floor's cottage, except there wasn't a fire crackling in the fireplace and it wasn't cold. Through the window, the players were able to see a beautiful landscape with green grass stretching into the distance under a clear blue sky. There was a beautiful forest right behind the cottage, a lake with clear water close to the cottage, and an enormous boulder situated beside the cottage. At the boulder, there was another door, a wooden door. The flowers bloomed in vibrant colors all around the cottage, creating a picturesque scene straight out of a fairy tale. The players walked out of the cottage, took in the beautiful view in front of them, and felt a sense of peace wash over them. Some rushed over to the lake to take a dip in the crystal clear water. Adam stepped out of the cottage and covered his eyes as the sun shone brightly in the cloudless sky. It looked like paradise. There's door. At that moment, a player shouted, and most of them rushed to the boulder. They attempted to open it, but the door stayed locked tightly. That's the way out. Ron walked out of the cottage and shouted. I have the key to open it, but you may not leave yet. Is there something left? A curious player asked. I thought the tutorial was over. I still have to give you all your scores. Ron shouted. I'll receive the scores soon enough, so stay close. Hearing that, the players started to feel nervous, especially those who weren't sure whether they performed well during the tutorial. Some gazed in the direction of Adam, who was clearly the top recruit in their group. They were certain that he would receive a great score. Adam took a seat on the porch and plucked a flower from the grass. He twirled the stem between his fingers with a calm look on his face. Even though he looked calm, he was also nervous. I did everything I could do. If that wasn't enough, there is nothing else I can do. The time moved by soon. It had been an hour since they entered the 5th floor. Some players were swimming in a lake, some were checking out the forest, but stayed within shouting range, and others were near the cottage, hanging out with their friends. Ron watched as they all had fun with his arms crossed, but then his ears perked up and a small smile rose to his lips. He entered the cottage, and from the door, a person stepped through. With a letter in hand. These are the scores of every recruit. The person, with a strange upside-down cross on his forehead and a cold glint in his eyes, handed over the letter. Handlers will be waiting in the new world. All right. Ron nodded. After the strange person left, Ron looked at the letter, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the cottage. He saw the players doing their things. Everyone, scores have arrived. The shout was so loud that it echoed across the forest. The players, no matter whether they were swimming or taking a nap in the grass, stopped whatever they were doing and gathered in the yard of the cottage. Ron used his finger and sliced open the envelope, then took out the piece of paper. As a reminder, those with a D or better score will become mercenaries. Others, I am sorry. But you have to try a different path. There are jobs for non-mercenaries as well. It isn't an end. Now, I shall begin. The players straightened their backs and nervously waited for their names to be called.